For over a decade, I shopped and worked at my local comic shop. One of the best parts about hanging out there was comparing notes on what I was reading with folks who shared my passion for comics. My comic shop is gone now, but we can still hold on to the magic of that in-store discussion. This is My Comic Shop Book Club. Welcome to My Comic Shop Book Club. I am your host, Anthony Desiato. Joining me to discuss the Red Hulk saga by Jeff Loeb and Ed McGuinness is my best friend from law school, Jeff Bondoc.
What's up, buddy? Thank you for finally having me on.
I know it took a while. I've been podcasting for a few years. I know it took a little bit to finally have the stars align and to have you on, but I'm so glad. I'm so happy to see you and to be able to compare notes with you. What a reading selection. What as far as first episodes go, this is quite an auspicious start for you here on the Flat Squirrel Podcast Network.
Yeah. I mean, you gave me that list, and you know I'm more of a Marvel zombie kind of guy, so I obviously gravitated towards one of the few Marvel titles on it. But and I wanted to read it. I just didn't realize that my interest in it was misaligned.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because I just want it known that you picked this.
This was me, so this is absolutely on me.
I mean, I do shoulder blame, because I did, like you said, I gave you a list, right? Like, we've been talking about this. I'm like, I want to have you on. We'll talk comics, and I gave you a list of a few things. It was like a handful of reading selections, right? And I mean, you didn't miss a beat, though. You were like, I'm down for Red Hulk, and I was like, all right. I had never read it before.
Which is kind of I had neither. So
you hadn't read it, so
no.
You know, for me, like, it's I think kind of surprising, right? Because I've gone on record, right? Like, I'm generally a fan of Jeff Loeb, and this episode is actually a little bit of a crossover with my Superman show, Digging for Kryptonite. Last week, it's not out yet as of this recording, but by the time this airs, right? Last week, I had an episode with Ken Marion. We talked about the Jeff Loeb run on Superman Batman. And earlier, on Digging for Kryptonite, I had done 2 episodes on the Jeff Loeb era of the main Superman titles. And earlier on My Comic Shop Book Club, I did an episode on the Jeff Loeb, Tim Sale Marvel Color series. So, you know, I've read a lot of Loeb, and I've covered a lot of Loeb, and I'm a fan of a lot of it, but I had never read this, and I felt like, wow, this is the perfect time.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'll just come right out and say it, man. It was tough to get through. It was really tough to get through for me.
It was rough reading, and the disparate parts coming together, you'd think Jeff Loeb, Ed McGuinness, I mean, that, you know, this is dynamite in a bottle. This is going to be something that we're going to enjoy, you know, cartoonish violence and you know, like, I mean, I'm probably a pretty solid personification of the character, but then you kind of get into it, and it's all fashion, no substance, you know?
Yes, I would agree with that. It puts me in a weird spot, though, as host of this show, because, like, for the most part, you know, my objective with this podcast is really for it to be a celebration, right? And to pick stuff that, you know, in some cases I'm picking things that I've already read, right? So I know that the quality's there, you know. But in other cases, you know, I am reading stuff for the first time, and that's part of the reason I wanted to do this podcast. And you know, I'm going to run into stuff like this where, you know, I pick something and it's a creative team that I really like, and I've liked past stuff that they've done, and I'm like, oh, winner, you know, and it ends up not being the case. One thing that might help us, I believe you have a cocktail as well. What
I'm in the same boat you are, sir. What's up?
What are you drinking?
Just some bourbon. Rabbit Hole. It was a gift from a friend, so I'm slowly getting through the bottle. But yourself, what are you enjoying? Also
bourbon. This is Maker's 46.
Ooh.
So this is a little bit of a variation on the standard Maker's mark. So cheers, my friend.
Cheers, sir.
It's interesting because I did the series premiere of My Comic Shop Book Club with Fat Moose owner Sean Hendricks, and he and we had cocktails during that episode, that discussion of All-Star Batman and Robin, another episode where it was kind of needed, and we had a lot of fun. But then after that, you and I think 1 or 2 other people who were kind of on the books for future podcast episodes were like, oh, can we drink during the episodes? I'm like, sure, like, knock yourself out. I mean, that's one of the benefits of doing all of these remotely, right? No one's driving, you know, we're all doing this from the comfort and safety of our own homes. And in certain instances, I think it helps.
Oh yes, I mean the part of the reason I asked was also because I had tackled a majority of the series prior to calling you, and I was like, we're gonna need some liquid courage to get through this because some hits and misses. Putting it generously, some hits and misses.
Yeah, and I don't know. This is a tough one. This is really a tough one because it's like I don't want to. And let me say this. Let me go on record as saying this. I take no delight in evaluating this, and my intention is not like, oh, let's just pile on this thing, but I think we do need to discuss it, honestly and fairly. And I will say, I put out the list on social media about the upcoming reading selections, and this one in particular, I got a number of responses that were like, ooh, like, good luck.
I saw some of those. That should have been we had already picked it. I had already picked it at that point, and I had committed to reading it. But
yeah,
and I'm not the biggest Hulk fan. Also, I'll admit that here. He's not one of my favorite characters. He's not a character that I've really delved into. But there's a lot of really good, a lot of really good Hulk stuff out there. There's iconic runs, like the initial Stan Lee, Jack Kirby stuff's very good. Then you've got obviously Peter David's run is legendary. I mean, it's become ubiquitous with the character, and the current Al Ewing run is incredible. So, and those are the ones I've kind of read. So I've never really tackled a mediocre Hulk run because. So, and I say that with full. I mean, I'm not trying to be overly critical. There was stuff in it that I enjoyed. We're gonna have to dig for it. But there was stuff in there that was okay. But it was tough.
Yeah, you mentioned other Hulk runs, and I'll share. I'm not a huge Hulk fan myself.
Right.
Again, I'm certainly aware of that. That very lengthy, legendary Peter David run that you mentioned, and I know kind of the broad strokes of that run, but I've not read it. That's sort of on my like all-time long-term list. Hopefully, I'll get to that at some point. I read actually all of the Paul Jenkins run from like the early to mid 2000s, and that was some good stuff. That was after they relaunched. That was after they relaunched the book.
Okay.
And then I read the first chunk of the Bruce Jones run.
Okay.
Which started out strong, but then I really lost interest. And then I did read Planet Hulk, and I thought that was cool. And I think I read World War Hulk at the comic shop, like as it was coming out, just to kind of see what was going on with it. And it was fun.
Yeah.
And that's kind of been it. And like I was getting at before, it's surprising to me that I never read this run by Loeb and McGuinness, since I liked so much of their other stuff. But it just. Right. To be honest, I think it was probably hearing people talk about it at the comic shop and kind of flipping through it and being like, I don't know if this is for me. And then, I've not read Indestructible Hulk by Wade or the Al Ewing Immortal Hulk, but those are definitely on my list, and I hope to get to them. And I am a huge fan of Hulk Gray by Loeb and
Hulk Gray
Sale.
is great. Oh, you'd think that, there'd be some kind of Hulk Gray was amazing, incredible, and I think that kind of colored my perception of what to expect out of Loeb and McGuinness's Hulk, because I really did enjoy Hulk Gray. And there's even a callback to Hulk Gray in the last issue of or the second to last issue of the run that we read, and it was great and nowhere to be found except for that 1-2 pages.
Yeah, I guess one last thing by way of setup before we really dive in. Mm-hmm. I have to give a shout out to one of my listeners, Nick Jones, not Rick Jones, but Nick Jones.
Okay.
So he's relatively new to the world of Flat Squirrel. He came across the documentary My Comic Shop Country, and he got really into that. He does a podcast called Film Guff, and he had me on there, and we talked about the movie Euro Trip. It was a lot of fun.
Euro Trip, really? That's a call to the vest.
That was my pick.
You picked Euro Trip?
Yeah, he's like, we talk about like hidden gem movies. He's like, we want to pick something, and I was like, how about Euro Trip?
Is it because Lana Lang is in it for like 3 scenes?
I mean, it doesn't hurt. But anyway, that episode is out there. Hope people check it out. He does another podcast, the Homework podcast.
Okay.
But anyway, he's gotten into the podcast that I do as well. And he's been, with book club in particular, really following along.
Okay.
So much so that, and this is where major guilt is setting in. He went out and I can't even
Oh,
say
no.
it out loud.
Oh,
he
no.
went out and he bought the Hulk,
singles?
the Hulk omnibus.
You bought the omnibus?
To prepare for this episode.
These are dollar books. I mean, you dig enough in a bin, you'll find them all. That poor guy. Is it?
Yeah,
Oh.
Nick, I feel so bad. I really, and I'm like half joking. Like I do genuinely feel a sense of responsibility here, but I'm glad that we established most of the fault lies at your feet. I'm glad that we established that. I feel like that's important for Nick to know. And if
I'll
it's
be the
all right
scapegoat.
if it's all right with you, before we're done here, I'll read your phone number on air so that he'll have your contact info and he'll reach out to you for like a reimbursement if that's all right with you.
I'm sure he could write it off as a tax expense or something, a business expense or something.
Yeah, but and again, that's the thing. That's the risk with the show. For the most part, I like to think the reading selections are going to be stuff that, I'm going to like and listeners will enjoy and that they would be worthy additions to their bookshelves, but that won't always be the case. But Nick, I appreciate the support and, you might have liked it. I don't know. I mean, that's the thing. Like everyone's mileage with this run is going to vary. I will say though, most of the people I've spoken to about this did not have great things to say.
Yeah. A bunch of my friends were flabbergasted that that was something that I was willingly subjecting myself to.
Let's not do what the run did, and let's right at the top establish who Red Hulk is.
Okay.
And let's issue this spoiler warning. The run has been out for over a
13
decade.
years.
So
yeah, this
most
is
likely you know who Red Hulk is already.
Right,
If not, we're going to spoil it. It's going to be part of our discussion.
Yeah.
Would you like to do the honors? Who is Red Hulk, Jeff?
General Thaddeus Thunderbolt Ross is the Red Hulk. And he is the least likable protagonist of a comic book I've read in several years.
Yeah, well said. Have you ever, I was thinking about this and I wanted to ask you, have you ever called someone a milksop?
I have never called someone a milksop.
Do you think you might do you think you might now, having gone through this run, do you think that might be part of your your vernacular, where if you really want to put someone down and you think they're a weakling, you'd be like, you milksop?
If it's one of the that might be one of the few positives that I'm taking away from this run. So yeah, that is going to be an everyday occurrence. I will have a milksop of the week. I'll start a Twitter account just for that.
We mentioned cocktails. If someone were to take a shot, let's say Nick Jones or someone else out there with the omnibus.
Yeah.
Right. So they have the entire story at their disposal. They're going to sit down for an evening. They're going to go through that thing. And let's say they decide they want to have some fun with it, make a little drinking game. Every time Red Hulk thinks or says milksop, they're going to take a shot.
Oof.
I mean, are they getting up the next morning? What kind of shape are they going to be?
I mean, I think you're gone 6 issues in at that point. Milksop, that shows up a lot. Yeah, it really does. Now that I look back on it, that is one of the more odd character traits for Thunderbolt Ross.
Yeah, and I just want to say, and I think you really hit the nail on the head in both respects. I think you've already targeted the two main problems that I had with this.
Yeah.
But I'll echo it, and because I want to make sure I'm upfront with this, is that in terms of why I didn't really enjoy this run, I agree with you that it was all flash and no substance. It didn't have the heart that I know Loeb can write with.
Exactly.
And has written with so many times before. And, that's the thing. I think that's why I was so disappointed with this run. It's because, I know what he can do.
Yeah.
And this wasn't that. So it was all flash and no substance. And, yeah, I mean, Red Hulk was not somebody whose adventures I was enjoying.
Right.
He wasn't a protagonist I could get behind.
Yeah. Would you even call him a hero? I mean, no, right? He's the main character, but in no way would you label him as the hero of this story. You even have a couple of side missions with just Bruce being the Hulk, and those were a lot. They were a lot more enjoyable than Red Hulk's if I may, Hulk's adventures. And if you're setting him as the kind of the breakaway character for this, if this is then you need to make him a lot more likable and a lot less problematic, which I found a lot of issues with just the way Loeb was characterizing him.
Like what kind of stuff?
This one stands out in my mind specifically, and I as I told you before when we were texting, that I was skimming the run again because I'm a masochist. But there's an arc split between Hulk and Bruce Green Hulk in Vegas, and Rulk in fighting Thundra, She-Hulk, and Valkyrie. If you can recall, and he's just the most misogynistic dialogue that I can recall reading. I mean, at one point, I don't know if you recall, but he's about to kill She-Hulk, and he just keeps hitting on the other two characters in some of the most lascivious and like filthy ways, and you're like, why am I reading this? This is terrible.
Yeah, no, I do remember that. Yeah, I mean, it's like, because there are characters you can love to hate, right?
Right.
And that could be fun.
Right.
He doesn't fall into this category,
no.
At least not for me. And, I referenced this a few minutes ago, but going back to our All-Star Batman and Robin episode, I came into that episode. I went into my reread, and I went into that episode, my whole thesis, and I still stand by this, was like, listen, there's a certain mindset that you need to have going into this story, and if you can accept that, you can have a lot of fun reading All-Star Batman and Robin. And that's not to say it's a perfect story. It's definitely not. And that's not to say that there aren't problematic aspects to it. But,
right.
At the end of the day, it's like you can get behind the idea that, like, okay, like this is this bonkers take on Batman. It's meant to be funny, and it's, painting a portrait of Bruce Wayne, like, at a really weird time where he's losing it. And, Dick Grayson's going to kind of help him, get back on his path. And, of course, the story never finished, so we didn't get to see it all come to fruition. But,
right.
You could kind of get a sense of where it was going. But it's like, for me, and I was able to enjoy the story to an extent with that mindset. Mm-hmm. And so with this, as I went into it and as I was reading, like, I was trying. I was like, well, is there a way that I could kind of approach this where it's like, no, like it's fun? And I just never got there.
No, same with me. It did feel like a chore in many ways. And you can absolutely make an enjoyable comic story where the villain is kind of the centerpiece. Matthew Rosenberg did it recently in a Kingpin run. Yeah, which is really good. It's a fun read. There's a lot of comics out there where Thanos is the central character, and he's just, obviously he's a villain, but, the way they characterize him, he can be very sympathetic. And even, one of the more Deadpool is not, the most, now he's a hero, but, he tends to vacillate between, mercenary and superhero. He's not necessarily a superhero. He's just likable. That's not the case in this comic.
The thing I kept thinking about was, I don't know, if this were animated or live action and you had, for example, Dwayne Johnson as Red Hulk.
Right.
I feel like that's the sort of thing that's like, okay, like now I kind of get a little bit more what they're going. I feel like just through his natural presence and charisma, right. Like you might be able to, latch onto the character a little bit, but
right.
But that's not what we're dealing with
No.
here. And I think from what's on the page, I don't know, it was real tough to connect with the character. And for the first half of the run, it's just issue after issue of him being a jerk and beating everyone up.
Everyone,
even the Watcher.
And that didn't even add anything to the story.
And look, I'm not a huge Marvel guy, so I wasn't even. It's not like I was even like. But even as not being a Marvel fan, I still had that thought of like, that's too much power. Like that doesn't make sense.
You're taking the Hulk, who's already the most powerful being or the strongest being in the Marvel universe, and you're essentially just kind of palette swapping him and gilding the lily a little bit, because not only do you have an incredibly powerful character, but you're also giving him more powers. The ability to absorb energy, the ability to project heat. How are we supposed to? There's no drama to this character because he's at no point is he really ever in danger, and on top of the fact that he's also supremely unlikable. So there's really the only drama in it is how much of a dick he can be.
Yeah, I mean, basically. And, so for like the first half, again, it's just him beating everyone up.
Yeah.
And you don't even get, I mean, I'd have to double check this, but I'm pretty sure you don't even really get his inner monologue on a regular basis until really it's like halfway through the run with that Code Red storyline. Right? And that's where we start to have the turn, right?
Yeah.
Where the people he's working for now have turned on him.
Right.
And now he kind of becomes the underdog, and that's when he teams up with Bruce. But it's like, even that, you felt no sympathy for him.
No, because he dug his own grave at that point. He like you said, in the what is it where he forms that team to fight the defenders, the offenders.
Yes.
So he chooses to align with villains in the first place. So that's already kind of seeing, or it's already kind of putting forth that, this guy isn't a good guy. I mean, he's choosing to side with Baron Mordo, with Terrax, with Tiger Shark, against this group of heroes. And then he proceeds to go on and massacre his own team, as well as he just kills everyone on the board. I mean, there's nothing heroic about that. And then he's mad that he doesn't actually kill, that everyone has been returned to their respective timelines. He's mad that he doesn't have any blood on his hands.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't know. It's like, are we supposed to root for him? I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard. I think that's what's kind of tough about this, because you would kind of expect, I suppose, like if you were to describe the character of Red Hulk to someone who hadn't read the run, you would probably assume they're like, oh, okay, like they're there as the antagonist, but like it's still Bruce's story. Right? But that's not the case. Like, Bruce is off the board for the majority of this run, really,
He's in the first couple of issues when he's kind of locked up in that what we think is a SHIELD facility. And then, later on, he's kind of aligned himself with Rulk. But, yeah, he's really not around. And then he has that solo story where he's in Vegas.
But, like, I don't know. So, with him being largely absent, I mean, it really is Red Hulk's. I refuse to call him Rulk.
Yeah,
which I know they do in this book.
Which is ridiculous. I'm throwing it in sporadically.
I can't. But really it becomes his story. But it's like, yeah, he's not likable. They don't really give you any reason to root for him. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough. I mean, I think, if you were to enjoy this story, I mean, I don't know. I think you just have to get behind the idea that, like, he is a jerk.
Yeah.
And he's strong. And he's going to beat everyone up. And if that's what you're looking for, this will scratch that itch. But, again, it didn't have the heart.
Yeah, I think that, I think this is a 90s character that is written in 2008. I mean, like a little bit extreme, chock full of machismo, which is... and I'm not disparaging that in any way, those comics in any way, but I think it's very much a byproduct of the 90s, like the Image Revolution, where you've got a lot of these characters that are extremely flashy, like powerful, overpowered, but really lack depth. I think that is kind of the parallel that I made when I was reading the Red Hulk, which is shocking because Loeb is such a great writer. But he gives the Hulk a gun, and I know Peter David did that during his run. But the Hulk doesn't need a gun.
Yeah, it's interesting with Loeb, and I think I have some perspective on it now, having just reread his whole Superman Batman run, and again, I know you haven't heard this yet, but the Superman Batman run, the 4 arcs that we talked about in that Digging for Kryptonite episode, it's really interesting because I don't know, maybe even in that run you see a shift in his writing, because the first 2 arcs, Public Enemies, where we deal with Lex as president, and then the Supergirl arc, they do a really nice job, I felt, even upon reread, of balancing that big blockbuster action that you would expect from a superhero book with a really interesting examination of the Clark Bruce dynamic and some true emotional resonance. Clark's anger over Lex being president, and then everything that Clark goes through when he realizes that, he might potentially have a relative from Krypton who's still alive, and he's not the last of his kind. Like, those first 2 arcs, I think, really do a lot, and there's a nice balance. And then in the Absolute Power and With a Vengeance arcs, it's they're, timeline hopping, and they're jumping through universes and alternate realities and all that stuff, and it just didn't have the depth and the heart that I felt the first two arcs did.
Right.
And I feel like the Red Hulk run that came after was that, but even kicked up another notch.
They really sacrificed a lot of the story for a lot of really great action scenes.
And there's a lot, and so if we want to say something, because I was thinking about this, I'm like, what can I say that's
few
nice
positives,
about the run?
yeah.
I love the art. Look, I love McGuinness.
Well, it's a murderer's row of talent that they bring in for this run. Like, the McGuinness stuff is amazing. Art Adams doing art on it, incredible. Frank Cho, another just talented artist.
Ian Churchill.
Yeah, Ian Churchill. Well, it's funny because Ian Churchill's style in this comic is very different from the style that he's known for. Like a lot of finer details, a lot of like cross hatching, and a lot of just like very, very, very like, it's not clean lines. He's putting a lot of details in it, but he's very much, I don't want to say he's not copying, but his style very much resembles Ed McGuinness' style in this book. And that's actually because he had a shoulder injury he had shoulder surgery prior to jumping on the book. So apparently that style of art was less intense for him to do. It was easier for him to do instead of using his typical art style. So I found that interesting.
Oh yeah, that is interesting. The other thing, I don't know if this jumped out at you, but McGuinness usually, and for most of this run, I believe, was inked by Dexter Vine.
Yes.
But he's inked by someone I forget offhand. I should have double checked. But there's a different inker for at least a couple of the later issues, and it really looks different. I mean, it really
feels
makes.
different.
I mean, it still looks like McGuinness,
Right,
but there is a different quality to it.
Yeah.
And it loses a little bit of that like full-on McGuinness effect. It makes you just appreciate the value of
A great inker.
what an inker can do, and how much they can really influence the final product.
Yeah, really just embellish a great style, especially a style that's as distinct as Ed McGuinness, because, as you know, like Ed McGuinness and Dexter Vines are kind of a 1-2 punch, the 1-2 combo. Very well known, frequently associated with each other, like, and it's the dream team for this book.
Yeah, so awesome art. We'll give it that. And I'll also say this: it reads fast.
So if you want to get through it quickly, you can.
I mean, that's the thing. Again, I'm trying to think how I broke this up. I did not do it all in one sitting. I mean, it was tough to get through in the sense that like I'm really not enjoying this, and it felt like a chore. But like issue by issue, like each issue, I was able to kind of like get through pretty quickly, which is not much of a compliment. I don't know, like if you went up to Loeb at a convention and you're like, I read your Hulk run. He's like, oh yeah, what'd you think? Very fast.
It goes quick. It goes real quick.
It's like, thanks. I don't know.
Exactly. Thank you for subjecting me to that. That was a lot of fun.
Let's take a 30-second commercial break,
Sure.
and then I want to talk about whatever else you want to talk about, and I also want to talk about the mystery aspect of this. I think that's the other huge component to this, and I actually have a listener sent in his take on it that I think will be
interesting.
fun. So so let's take a quick break, and then we'll get right back into it.
Sounds good.
Movie lovers should check out this family of film festivals: the Brightside Tavern Film Festival in Jersey City, the Hang On to Your Shorts Film Festival in Asbury Park, and the Point Lookout Film Festival on Long Island. Submission information for filmmakers, as well as details about the festivals generally, can be found at filmfreeway.com. Also, be sure to listen to the podcasts hosted by the festival's organizer, CJ Cullen. You can find the official Hang On to Your Shorts podcast, as well as the Cullen on Film podcast, via a shared universe network. And we're back. So, did you know who Red Hulk was when you started your reading project?
I did, actually. I did. It was pretty well known secret after the run came out, and as someone who had just picked it up because we decided we were going to read it, there was a lot of time for it to get spoiled.
Yes, that is true. What's funny is that I was pretty going into this, I was pretty sure it was Ross. Again, I think just being at the comic shop and hearing people talk about it, and it's like I'm sure I read an article about it at the time, even though I wasn't reading the actual story, but just to kind of know who it was. But again, we're talking over a decade, and it's not something that I ever really fully investigated or thought about, so it wasn't top of mind. Right. But in the back of my head, I'm like, oh, I'm pretty sure it's Ross. And then there is that misdirect, right, in the first arc, at the end of the first arc, where Red Hulk is knocked out, and you see Ross and you see Samson, and I will say that was enough to cast a little bit of doubt. I mean, in retrospect, it's like, well, of course it would have been the life model decoy. But
right.
In the moment, it was enough to cast a little bit of doubt, such that as I was making my way through the story, I wasn't 100% sure. But to your point, it's like as you keep going, I mean, it's like, who else could it possibly be? Right. And especially with all the milksop stuff, which I'm pretty sure Ross calls him in Hulk Gray by Loeb. I would have to double check, but between that and the lack of Ross elsewhere in the story for the most part, I mean, it just kind of by process of elimination, it's like, well, it kind of has to be him. So it's just so odd to me that they would drag this out for almost the entire run.
2 years. 2 years of not knowing.
And we read this over, a span of days, so it's like not that big of a deal. And again, you knew, I was pretty sure, but it's like even if we went in not knowing at all, it's like, all right, you'll know in a few days. I don't know, if you were reading this as it were coming out for 2 years?
Well, do you think anyone was concerned? I think that the whodunit aspect of it kind of took a back seat to all the. I mean, it would pop in. It would pop in sporadically here and there. The domino arc.
Right.
Kind of was brought it to the forefront again, and there's this is Len Sampson's jacket bathed in gamma radiation, and you've got a lot of clues here and there, but I don't think I think the mystery became less central to the story the further it went on, and I think it's just because the reveal was going to disappoint regardless. Because this is not a whodunit you could figure out. This is not a mystery. Did you think you could figure out? I don't think they lay out any clues. This is not an Agatha Christie novel where they're kind of sprinkling in, potential suspects and.
No, and so this is the thing, right? I think there are maybe 3 versions of Loeb, the comic book writer. Mm-hmm. And my favorite is the heartfelt Loeb.
Yes.
The Loeb of For All Seasons and the Marvel Color books. Yeah. And, and there are aspects of that in his Superman run and those first couple Superman Batman arcs, where he writes from the heart, and they're character-driven stories that, really I think reveal a lot about the characters, and oftentimes you see that in the way the characters talk about each other, via their monologues and everything, and it's very interesting. Yeah. So the bittersweet, heartfelt, nostalgic Loeb, my favorite.
Yes.
Loeb, the mystery writer. Now, I've read Long Halloween and Dark Victory and all that stuff, but it's been a few years, so I won't say anything now because I have to reread that before I make a final judgment. But I have recently reread Hush, and that's actually the subject of an upcoming book club episode that I've already recorded.
Okay.
So that one's in the can, and that'll be coming out at the beginning of April, so not too long from now.
Okay.
And I don't know what your feelings are about Hush, but it's not a great mystery.
It's not a great mystery. There's so many misdirects that are just... They're misdirects that would only work in a comic book universe. This is not something where you can base it on regular logic because, comic books defy logic. That's why we love them. But it doesn't lend itself to really permitting someone to follow a regular line of logic to figure out who the culprit is.
Right. That's the thing. And I say this in the Hush episode, but a little bit of a preview. I feel like, and I'm no mystery expert, but I feel like for a mystery to really work, there have to be breadcrumbs, clues that you could potentially figure it out. Not that it's easy to figure out, but there should be enough there that you could, but more importantly, there should be enough there that you get to the end and you're like, oh, I can't wait to read that again. Right. And you read it again and now you see how everything lines up.
Yeah.
And with Hush, and I won't. Although I mean, again,
I read Hush. I enjoyed Hush.
Well, so that's the thing. Hush is still very enjoyable.
It is very
enjoyable. I loved it. It's great as a look into Bruce's personality, and even more so as this a really fantastic encapsulation of the Batman mythology and the allies and the rogues gallery. Like it's like
Jim Lee art. Let's not forget Jim Lee art.
Exactly. So there's a lot about it that I really, really like, but it's not a great mystery.
No, it's not.
And then you have the Loeb of, Red Hulk, and I never read his Ultimates, but I think that's probably, kind of...
That's kind of maligned as well, I think, right?
Kind of in that vein where, again, like the Flash of No Substance, kind of Loeb. But yeah, I mean, as far as a mystery... So I had a listener write in, Lord of Retail, Acme Comics.
Jermaine. I met him at a Baltimore Comic-Con. Very cool guy.
Oh, yeah, that's
right. I think I told you, I texted you that story.
Yeah.
I'm hanging out with Lord Retail right now.
Yeah, he's the best.
He's a cool guy.
He's been on my other podcast, My Comic Shop History, and features rather prominently in My Comic Shop Country. Yes. But... he was one of the people when I announced this reading selection. He texted me. He was like, "Oh boy," and I was like, "Oh, like what do you got?"
That's on me.
And he called it, and I asked him. I was like, "May I quote you on this?" He was like, "Yes, please do." He called the treatment of the mystery abusive, toward readers, and he distinguished it from. Did you follow the Hobgoblin mystery in the classic Spider-Man stories? Are you familiar with this?
I'm aware of the character. I
Well, that's a good starting point.
Yeah, I'm aware of the character.
So with Hobgoblin in the Amazing Spider-Man run, this was like Roger Stern. Like I believe this was all the brainchild of Roger Stern. But Hobgoblin's identity was kept secret for many years, and then Stern eventually left, and I believe other writers revealed who Hobgoblin was, and then Stern later came back and basically retconned and put in who he originally wanted Hobgoblin to be. But that was a mystery that went on for many, many years. But to Jermaine's point, it's like fans were still kind of on board with that. Whereas with this, again, he described it as abusive. And I think that, in terms of how long it lasted, the lack of meaningful clues, how obvious it was. Like, that's the thing. And this is what I wrote back to Jermaine. I was like, as I was reading this, again, figuring it was Ross, and it felt like, well, it has to be Ross. But that made me doubt myself. I'm like, well, it wouldn't be that obvious. But it's like, no, it was.
Well, the only suspects really are what? Ross and Doc Samson, and Doc Samson is a little bit more red herring than Red Hulk in this, so like it's going to be Thunderbolt. Yeah,
but then it's like why drag it out as long as they did?
Didn't need to be 2 years. Did not need to be 2 years.
Yeah, I mean I don't know. It just feels like what, and I guess that's kind of what I think about because. Again, trying to find something positive about it. I would say there were 3 issues in this run that I actually liked.
Okay.
And they were the ones where Loeb was his most classic Loeb.
Okay.
The Leonard Samson Spotlight issue where he's in that therapy session with himself.
Yes.
The origin episode. The origin.
That's a great issue. That's probably one of the only ones I enjoyed.
Right. And then I think it was issue 13 or so, where it's Banner centric.
Mm-hmm.
After Rulk has absorbed all of his energy and he can't be Hulk anymore, and he hits the road, but it's kind of introspective, and you spend some time with Bruce. Like, those were the 3 issues that I liked, where he really told the story through the perspectives of each of those characters, and I thought that was interesting.
Right.
But so I wanted to ask you, it's like, do you think the story would have been better, would have been more effective, might have had a little bit more meat on the bone if we knew it was Ross and you actually could invest in his story a little bit more from the beginning or from issue 7 instead of 24?
No, that's a great point. And thinking back on it, I think that it would at least give you a reason to not like the Red Hulk, beyond characterization, because Thunderbolt Ross has never been a character that you can ever get behind. Very much like old school, like I don't want to say toxic masculinity, but like that I think that's kind of an aspect of his character. You know, this belief that might makes right, and which is why, you know, Bruce was never enough for Betty, and why he kind of coveted the power that the Hulk had. So knowing that this was not a character that is going to be heroic in really any way, it frees you. It gives you, it permits you to lose the expectation that this is a good guy. It's not a good guy. He's not a good guy. He's like the main character. You know, he'll fight villains, but he's not a good guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know. And in fairness, you know, we have the benefit now of over a decade, and, you know, we can play, you know, Monday morning quarterback
right.
and look back on it and say, oh, I should have done this, should have done that. I don't know. I can't. It's such a jerky. But I can't imagine it being much worse. You know what I mean? Like, I feel like if we had at least known it was Ross and we knew how he got to this point and what he was trying to achieve, and I don't know. It just, there might have been more of an opportunity to invest. I just feel like in terms of what we have. And the other thing, too, that was like weird about this run to me, like, how do I put this? And if you enjoyed this run, I'm not trying to take away your enjoyment of it. And in fact,
absolutely.
I have one person who liked it.
Really?
Scott Honig, who he was on the last episode
right?
Of this,
yeah.
Where we did the Kevin Smith, Green Arrow, and Daredevil. And he's going to be back for a Greg Rucka Detective Comics episode in a little bit as well. But he wrote to me and he was like, you know, I liked it. He said, you know, after the drama of Planet Hulk and World War Hulk, like it was, you know, it was a nice kind of like palate cleanser, and it was, you know, fast paced and action packed, right? Yeah. And you know, I don't begrudge him his enjoyment of that, but I think, I don't know, as I was reading this, I feel like it really was aimed, I don't know, more for, well, not for kids. I don't know. There's a lot that's not necessarily kid friendly, but I guess what makes me say that is in this tour through the Marvel Universe, and I don't know, like the whole Offenders group, and, you know, She-Hulk and the Lady Liberators, and then that Code Red arc where Red Hulk assembles all the red costumed,
which is
characters, and it just felt like Loeb was playing with action figures. Like that's what the stories read like, and that's what makes me say like aimed maybe more for a younger audience. But I agree. I mean, you know, that you know, again, for the most part, I was not say this is a kid friendly story, but it had like, but didn't it have that feel to you?
No, I understand. I would, if I were to kind of compare it to something, I would say it's kind of like a Michael Bay movie. You know, a lot of explosions, a lot of really cool action scenes. The story is not necessarily like, the story is very much, you know, it's on the surface. This is what you're getting, but it's kind of put together in a very enjoyable, visually stimulating package, and I think that's kind of what the Red Hulk is. You know, like he's in his sandbox and he's just kind of, you know, making, you know, his Punisher action figure smash into his X-23 figure. It's what's cool is Daniel Way later on. I don't know if you've read this run, but Daniel Way kind of takes the same team. So it's Red Hulk, Punisher, Elektra, and Deadpool, and maybe another character thrown in. But he spins them off later on into its Thunderbolts title. But he kind of takes that team, and there's a little bit more to it. But Daniel Way does a good job of kind of taking Jeph Loeb's, you know, Hulk team, Code Red team, and kind of giving them a purpose, which is pretty interesting. And I think Charles Soule takes over later on. I mean, don't quote me on that. I might not be right, but I definitely know Daniel Way was kind of took the characters and gave them a little bit more. All
right. Well, that's good. I mean, that's good to hear. And, you know, that's, you know, with the nature of comic book storytelling, right? You can have that. Yeah. You know, you can, you know, a subsequent writer can come on and kind of add another dimension or something like that. And so that's, you know, that's cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, like as I was reading it, you know, issue by issue, arc by arc, you know, this tour through the MCU, you know, again, everything that I laid out, that was just sort of the feel that it had. But it's interesting because like what Loeb did with Hush was not completely dissimilar, right? He kind of gave you that tour through the world of Batman, but I felt like there it was more impactful because each time Batman interacted with one of his enemies or allies, it kind of showed you something about Batman or that dynamic, right? Like it was organic and there was a purpose to it. Whereas in this story, it just felt empty. It just felt exactly like this whole thing of like the packaging. I think what you hit the nail on the head with it, right? Where it just kind of felt like, okay, like we're gonna play with these toys for this arc, and it's like, okay,
how cool is this? How cool is this?
Yeah, that's kind of where I land on that.
I feel like a lot of story arcs kind of didn't lead anywhere. I mean, there's it's a fun read at the time, but it doesn't necessarily lend itself to maybe progression of this ultimate story. Like I'm thinking about, I think the most the most obvious example is kind of the Defenders Offenders arc, where he kills everyone, but it doesn't matter because they get returned to their timelines or where they were at the time that they were taken. So it's kind of just there and then immediately retconned.
I want to just jump back to Lord Retail for a second because there's another thing that he texted to me a couple of times, and it's
the same statement that he just felt the need to send you a couple of times.
Yeah, I you know what? When I say it, you're going to be like, oh, I get it. It is a really good point. I don't know if you thought about this. I'll be honest, it didn't cross my mind, but when he said it, I was like, well, of course. It's like, yeah, that is kind of difficult to reconcile. Jermaine refers to it as the retractable mustache. Like, why does Red Hulk not have a mustache if Ross does? Had you thought about that? Because I didn't.
Actually, I'd never even thought about that. That makes no sense. That's actually really interesting. I never thought of that. Because I did a little bit of research into the Red Hulk. They kind of remedy that in a later arc of U.S. Avengers, where they have a character that kind of assumes the role of the Red Hulk. It's not Thunderbolt, but he's another military man. He assumes the role of the Red Hulk with some technology from I think AIM. Where he becomes the Red Hulk, but he's still got the Tom Selleck stash going on. But that's a great point. Yeah, I didn't even think about that until now.
Which I do think adds insult to injury with this mystery. The fact that it was a mystery that was sustained for almost the entirety of this 2-year run, where they're simultaneously somehow, like, it was both incredibly obvious who it was, yet really not enough breadcrumbs for you to really form the full picture. And you have this like glaring error, not error, but kind of like something that was really overlooked that probably should have been addressed.
Right.
About the mustache. So I feel like, overall, really, if you're looking at this as a mystery, I think it
falls flat.
Really, really tough.
Yeah, it's not. Well, what do you think of the? I mean, do you even consider it a mystery? We're talking, obviously, the focal point is Thunderbolt. Who is the Red Hulk? But did you at any point find yourself wondering who the Red She-Hulk was?
I mean, I figured it was Betty.
You figured it was Betty.
I didn't, but at that, at that point, I didn't.
You didn't care, right?
That's the thing. It's like at that point when it's like, okay, a red version of another. It's just I didn't care.
Yeah. Well, I think that the problem with this arc in a whole is that it just kind of waters down who the Hulk is by introducing all of these superpowered gamma radiated characters. Like it's unnecessary. Obviously you've got the Hulk and She-Hulk, who are kind of the Hulk characters, but now you've got the Red Hulk. Now you've got Red She-Hulk. Now you've got A-Bomb. All of these, and they're the Hulk. They're powerful like the Hulk, but they've got additional powers, Like that I don't think they're taking the Hulk and they're just, adding a bunch of new features on him. Like they're the 2008 models of whatever the Hulk was.
Yeah. No. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I think that's a problem with this. It's like, again, the DC guy, but you look at Green Lantern and the Green Lantern Corps, and it's like, well, that's built into the premise of the character and that mythology that you're going to have all of these different
He's a part of a team, or he's a part of a corps.
Right. And then you have, the Flash family, for example. Right. But there too, there's that kind of dynamic, and they each occupy their own space. This just felt like, again, sort of like playing with like what's another toy that we can throw in the mix.
What's a cool thing I could do? Like, that's what it is, just trying to come up with like a cool thing that I can do with some of these characters.
Yeah. I will say I was very excited when I got to the end of, I don't know if it was the first issue. Are you okay? Are you okay? Oh my goodness. All right, you're all right. All right. Take your time. It's all right. It's all good.
Sorry. Wrong tube.
No. All right. It's okay. Take your time. We'll. I'll vamp.
Okay.
I'll vamp. It's okay. I was just. All right. I'm glad you're okay.
I'm good. Whew. Little heat down there.
Maybe we shouldn't be so hard on this Red Hulk run.
This is Loeb. This is Loeb getting the bad juju.
Well, you can't handle your alcohol? What are you, some kind of milksop?
Well done, sir. Good pivot.
I think I'm just going to leave that in because I think for anyone who's made it to the 51-minute mark, I think they'll be like, oh my God, like what?
Are we that deep?
What happened?
Are we that deep? Are we 51 minutes in?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my God. I didn't think we'd have this much to talk about.
Look, I knew that we would have a fun episode, and I knew that you and I could fill an hour, no problem.
Easy.
But at the same time, I was a little worried because I was like, I really don't have that much. Well, I guess clearly I do, but I didn't feel like I had that much to say about this run, really.
It's shallow.
But
that's, there's not much depth to it.
Yeah. And you know what? That's the thing. To Scott's point, I don't think he would necessarily dispute the shallow claim. Maybe he would. I don't know. But, for him, it's like he liked it because it was light and fun and action-packed.
Oh, you can like it because it's shallow. You know? It's...
And maybe Loeb, if you raised any of this with him, maybe Loeb would be like, no, that's what I was trying to do. Like, I just wanted this, off the wall, antagonistic Hulk character who beats everyone up, and that's it. And all right.
I mean, he accomplished that.
But again, it's just, he definitely did.
He definitely accomplished that.
And I don't know if it was the first issue or one of the later issues, but those one-page backup stories with the mini Marvels.
Those were a lot of fun. And your boy Chris Giarrusso.
I didn't know that they were part of this run, and I know at a certain point there was a different creator who was doing them, but Chris did the first batch, and when I got to that first, I was like, "Yo, Chris!" I was happy to see that. That was the best part. That's the best part of the issues.
There's some truth to that because those were a lot of fun. Red, blue, and green Hulk was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. So shout out to Chris. Chris, I haven't spoken to him in a long time, but yeah, he's awesome, and I was really happy to see him.
I still covet the sketch card he did for me after supporting your Kickstarter. I love that little sketch card that I got from him.
Who did you get?
I got Gambit.
Yeah.
My favorite mutant. I'm lame like that.
Yeah. He was awesome, and he wasn't the only one. There were a lot of people who who did awesome stuff. Like Greg Schiegel did sketches as well. Brandon Montclair did portfolio reviews.
Yeah.
There was a lot of
you got some heavy hitters, dude. That's people, a lot of people in the industry.
Yeah, people did some really cool stuff for that My Comic Shop Country Kickstarter campaign. But for Chris in particular, he did these sketch cards as rewards, and you got Gambit, and that's awesome. Yeah, they came out great.
They were really I love cool. I love mine.
So that was a fun aspect. Had nothing to do with the main story, but they were there.
It made it easier to read. Knowing that I could look forward to the little Hulk strips at the end of it.
Yeah, we also have to address how eerily the climax of the run parallels recent real-world events.
Absolutely.
Because if I were to say to you, hey, remember that time that a red-faced blowhard who claimed that he was saving the country directed a mob of people to storm the Capitol? I could either be talking about recent real-world events or this Hulk run.
Exactly.
And, regardless of where you fall politically, the parallels are right there.
I'm kind of glad we're getting into it because... ultimately, his end game is, a coup. He thinks that he knows what's best for the country. and he is going to do whatever it takes to ultimately take the reins. And it's just so salient a point, especially now reading. Like, would you have ever thought that a comic that came out 2010 or whenever that issue came out would resonate so much? I mean, like, it's truth emulating fiction.
Yeah, I mean, it was really weird because we're recording this mid-February. It'll drop the end of February, but I did my reading mid-January.
Yeah,
it was like a week after the Capitol riot.
Yeah.
And I was reading on my iPad, and I took a screenshot of the army of red Hulks.
Yeah.
I'll talk about too many Hulks. Everyone becomes a Hulk at the end of the story. Storming the Capitol. And it was, weird and off-putting, and it's like having just lived, watching all of that on the news, and then seeing it in this comic book that came out more than a decade prior was really weird. And it definitely, for me at least, painted Ross in a different light.
Yes.
And all of the rhetoric, and because it's not just in that issue, but leading up to it, once we start to spend more time in his head, right? He has a lot of talk about saving the country,
yes,
and making it, great again.
Yes, exactly.
So it really made me look at the character in a different way than I would have absent everything we've lived through in recent times.
Well, it makes him more. I mean, it takes away the whatever can be considered as like the heroic end game for him, because this is a gentleman, and let's not forget, he's a decorated military officer, he's someone that has served his country, but he's also, like, on the flip side, this is a guy that's committed treason by releasing the abomination. This is a guy that has decided that his way of doing things is the right way to do things, and I think that any kind of aspect of him that was redeemable is gone because of current events, and I just think it's very indicative of the current climate. And I don't think Loeb ever intended it to be that way. This was just fiction to him, but it happened.
Yeah. I mean, it really, again, it just painted this storyline, but his character in particular in a different light. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I mean, if there were any, I don't know, like if anyone was out there kind of like on the fence about, should I read or reread this run? I don't know if there was any reason to tell someone that they should.
Yeah.
It might be for this, because I really think it does give it some added weight. Though it is, again, it was hard to read, especially like in the immediate aftermath of January 6th. It was like, oh man, what are the odds? Like this.
Yeah, this is not something you'd ever expect to happen. And I completed my read of Hulk probably end of December, so I really didn't even think about it until you texted me that I've been going through my read, and it kind of hits a little bit harder because of current events, and then I look back on it, and you were right, it's just something that you'd never expect, but there it is. A bunch of crazed, juiced up individuals slathered in red, that are trying to, that are trying to take over the government, and it's scary, and it shouldn't have been, but it was scary.
Yeah. So I mean, unfortunately, due to what we've lived through, like the ending of that arc, definitely it was more dramatic, and I think more, packed more of a punch in light of everything.
Yeah.
But, and then, in the end, of course, it comes down to a brawl between the two Hulks, and Green Hulk was just stronger.
Just stronger. We're rooting for the Hulk. We're rooting for the Green Hulk the whole time. But it just confuses me as to how much power the Red Hulk. Like, I don't understand where on the spectrum of strength the Red Hulk falls, because he beats up Thor pretty easily, you know. And he beats up the Green Hulk at one point, but like with these added, you know, with the added abilities of absorbing the radiation and everything, like how powerful is he actually?
Yeah, I don't know. That's the thing. And, you know, they make such a big deal earlier in the run when he absorbs all the, you know, gamma radiation from Bruce. He can never be the Hulk again. And it's like, I mean, of course, you know, he will. He ends up, so I don't know what you did. I only read the Loeb stuff. So anything that's collected in that omnibus, anything Hulk that Loeb wrote, I read. But there were a lot of crossovers because they did the Fall of the Hulks and then World War Hulks. Yeah. I didn't read any of the tie-in stuff. But he gets his powers back in a different issue.
He does. I read Fall of the Hulks until you told me I didn't need to read Fall of the Hulks.
at that point in the run, I was like, listen, don't do any more than you really
try to preserve your sanity. But I mean, I dabbled a little bit, but like it doesn't add much. And Greg Pak was writing the Incredible Hulks at that point, and he's a great writer. I really enjoy Greg Pak. But, you know, even he could not say it. He could not make the tie-ins to the Hulk title very palatable.
I think for me, like, it just shows how checked out I was. Because I just felt like he'll get his power. Like, you know, he showed up again. I was like, all right, he got his powers back. I didn't care.
Yeah.
And I figured there's, you know, I don't know, he, you know, was in another gamma blast or something. It's like, whatever, just any number of things where he could have gotten his powers back. So I didn't bother with any of the tie-in stuff. And that's, to be honest, maybe I would have enjoyed them more than the other issues. But I was just like, I just need to get through.
Yeah.
These 24 issues.
You need to push through. Did I ultimately find it enjoyable? There were aspects of it like we said, the art and, you know, the fights and everything, but ultimately, you know, it really fell short for what I wanted to enjoy.
Yeah, I mean, I was open to enjoying it. Yeah. You know, I went in.
Well, you're a Loeb fan, so you were pretty. Like, I mean, I'm sure that in your mind that this was going to be something that kind of fell in line with the other Loeb stuff you've read.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I initially had this idea of like, okay, like it'll be cool to talk about Loeb, Superman, Batman, and I'll talk about this. You know, I guess I was somewhat optimistic, and I looked at it as like, oh, here's like this pretty big run, because I've read almost all of his stuff. I didn't read his, like, the Cable stuff that he did back in the day.
I didn't even know he did Cable stuff.
I didn't read his Ultimates, but like I've read almost all of his comic book work, and this was a pretty big gap. Yeah. So I was kind of excited. I'm like, oh, like this is a chance to read something of his, and you know, maybe I'll like it. But you know, hearing some feedback from people, I was started to get a little wary. But I went in certainly with an open mind and, you know, hoping that I would like it. And, you know, at the end of the day, I mean, I appreciate the work that the creators put into it, and I did think that the art was cool. But yeah, I really didn't enjoy it.
Right. I'm very much in the same boat as you. I think that it could have been great. It could have been something that was very enjoyable. But ultimately, I guess, you know, Thunderbolt Ross is just not a character that lends itself to much sympathy, you know? Like, this is someone that alienated his daughter, you know, ends up committing treason on multiple occasions. And he kind of, you know, every time he gets his butt kicked, he deserves it.
Yeah. You know, in the Digging for Kryptonite episode, I mentioned this episode to Ken Marion, and I was like, "Have you read it?" And he was like, "No." I was like, "I haven't really read like much, if any, Hulk." And I was like, "Don't start with this."
You warned him, right?
I was like, "Yeah." I was like, "If you are, don't start here." I just think there are stronger representations of the character that would be more, you know, worth his time. You know, we didn't even talk about the intelligentsia, like the leader and the other villains who were kind of behind everything. the whole thing about going after the world's smartest people, like Reed Richards, and that was cool.
Yeah,
that was fine. That's all I got.
It's like they were an interesting choice of villains too, because a lot of them are kind of. The Hulk's rogue gallery is not that there's not much breadth to it. You've got the leader, you've got Abomination, and then like who else is there really? So to kind of introduce the Red Ghost as someone that we should be worried about, or MODOK, doesn't really add much gravity to that group.
Yeah. I don't know. I know you had taken some notes. What else was in your notes?
Let's see.
It's funny because I know you texted me. You were like, do I have to take notes?
I have no idea.
I was like, so it's funny because the last two people who were on the show, Jeremy, we talked about the color series, and then Scott, we talked about the Kevin Smith stuff. They're both teachers.
Okay.
So I think it's very natural for them, to take notes. Sean Hendricks for All-Star Batman, no notes. He came with his cocktail. He had just done his reading assignment. He didn't read the last issue in the run because it wasn't collected in the trade paperback that he had. So he came in and we knocked it out. So I said to you, I was like, there's certainly no expectation for you to have any notes. Right. I don't have any notes.
I've got a couple of observations.
I just wing it, and I figure, in some cases the guests have their own notes. But
yeah.
What else did you have on yours?
Here's another thing about this is what I noticed about General Ross is that he has, he's for years kind of viewed the Hulk as just this menace, this individual that's racked up a body count over the years. That's why he's worthy of his ire, because the Hulk is just basically a walking WMD. But he has no concern about, racking up his own body count. He just has no problem with the collateral damage. Taking out the SHIELD helicarrier, fighting on Gamma Base. He's got no worries about killing Clay Quarter. Well, I guess that wasn't him. That was Samson.
Right.
But, he, for such a dedicated military officer, he has no problem just destroying military bases.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's a really good point. And, once again, to play, Monday morning quarterback, it would have been interesting if they had done something a la Superior Spider-Man. Mm-hmm. If Ross, as Red Hulk, had been like, look, I'm going to show you how you can use these powers for good and not cause destruction. Right, and not rack up a body count. I feel like that could have been an interesting angle. Right. But it just went in the other direction. But that's a really good point.
Yeah, just this is someone who's essentially made his bones being just a high-ranking military guy. They also claim that he's some kind of great strategist, and I don't see any of that during the course of the series. He kind of just goes around punching stuff. Which I didn't get.
I'll say this. I did like that, part of Banner's plan was faking Ross's death, right? And then that comes back at the end where Banner's like, you can never turn back into Ross again.
That's true.
Because, everyone thinks you're dead, and we mourned you, and that was the best day that you'll ever have when everyone came out to celebrate you. I thought that was cool.
That was interesting. I also thought it was interesting that the death of Captain America was something that meant so much to him. I mean, because obviously he's kind of the epitome of, the dedicated military man in the Marvel universe. In Civil War, when Captain America is beating the Jesus out of the Punisher, when the Punisher kind of kills those Jack-o'-lantern and whoever the Jester, whoever that other villain is that's trying to join the superhero underground, and then Captain America beats him up, and then Punisher doesn't throw a punch at him. It's kind of very indicative of how highly they regard, the military regards Captain America as just the bastion of the army, or. Which I thought was also very interesting. I don't know if you can remember that moment.
Yeah, no, for sure. No, I did think about that, and I just kind of skimmed through a few of the issues, in advance of this. It's. I hate to say it, but I don't know. This obviously I remember the broad strokes of this run, but it didn't make much of an impression on me because there was a lot that I had kind of forgotten, and as I was like flipping,
Yeah.
scrolling through the issues on my iPad, it's like, oh yeah, that happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, the role that Cap's death played, that definitely stood out. I mean, it's sad, but I think true to life, right? The fact that Ross holds Steve Rogers in such high regard, yet clearly hasn't learned anything from him.
Exactly. Like it's very, very hypocritical of him. To view Captain America, or to kind of hold Captain America in that high regard, but still, try to run a coup on the country. Let's see what. Was there a moment that you found particularly egregious or like offensive in the run?
I mean, really, the storming the Capitol really, that made I think the biggest impression. I mean, for you, was it him with the Lady Liberators?
It was the Lady Liberators, and the fact that he was able to use Mjolnir when he was in space. Like, I took a lot of offense to that because I feel like Jeph Loeb was kind of trying so hard to establish Red Hulk's dominance that he needed to just kind of go over all of these established powerhouses in the Marvel universe to their detriment. Like you have this new shiny toy. You want to show how cool he is by kind of clearing out all of these characters that have a lot of swag in the Marvel universe. He beats up Thor and is able to use Mjolnir in space. Knocks out the Punisher for no reason, and then kills the Grandmaster and throws down with Galactus at one point.
Yeah. I mean, I guess along those lines, like I said before, like him punching out the Watcher. Again, not even being a huge Marvel guy, but it just felt wrong to me. And I guess, and not to get fanboyish about this or nitpicking, but it's just, I think there's such a fine line because to your point, I mean, like, I agree. I think that's 100% what Loeb was doing, right? Like you want to establish, okay, this is a badass, this is a powerful character. We're going to show you that, right? And kudos to Loeb, show don't tell, right? He shows you, Red Hulk beating up all these people, but then it's like, well, if he's that powerful, he can never be defeated.
and
unless he gets too warm, apparently.
Right? Yeah. No, he overheats. It's the worst Achilles heel. He just can't. He can't work too hard because he apparently lacks sweat glands or something.
Yeah.
He's like a pig. Just roll around in the mud or something.
I don't know. What else? Anything else from your notes?
Yeah. What did you think of? Kind of Rick Jones, shifting from the all-purpose sidekick to kind of establishing his own power set, and becoming one of these powered beings.
I did not care.
No, yeah, I didn't care for it either because he's the everyman. I think in the Marvel universe, he's the perennial sidekick, and I think to give him superpowers. I mean, one can argue that during Peter David's Captain Marvel run, he kind of had powers because he was switching out with Captain Marvel, but I didn't like it at all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think this kind of speaks to that larger issue that you brought up before about there being too many Hulks. I mean, but I guess, that's how you end up with a storyline called World War Hulks. True. I mean, I get, like that's what he was going for. But yeah, I think making so many characters Hulk characters, you kind of lose something. So yeah, that to me just felt goofy. And I loved Loeb's treatment of Rick in Hulk Gray. And and I know there's a lot obviously that's been mined with Rick over the years. And so maybe I don't know, maybe Loeb didn't necessarily need to do something more nuanced with him, but I certainly would have appreciated it. Yeah, the whole A-bomb thing was just kind of goofy to me.
I didn't understand the need for it, and like I said before, it waters down who the Hulk is because you have all these Hulk-esque characters, but that are, that have more powers than the Hulk. Fire projection or A-bomb's ability to camouflage himself. It felt so unnecessary. It really cheapened who the Hulk was, I thought.
Yeah. You know, I don't know. I don't know. I wish I had anything else to offer. Yeah, I don't know. What else do you have?
I asked you about so you really didn't care that Betty Ross was the Red She-Hulk.
I mean, I guess to an extent. Although I think the whole resurrection with her, didn't that play out in a different issue?
So it played out in a random issue of Incredible Hulks that I did end up reading, but I found this interesting. What do you think of the villain, like the rise of the villain that was, Samson?
That was actually one of the more interesting aspects of the story.
Yes, absolutely.
Me. And like I said, that therapy issue where, you kind of get at the issues and the jealousy that he's felt, right? And feeling kind of like passed over.
Yeah.
There's that one scene in particular where the therapist, who, we find out is just Leonard, right? Another part of his mind. But, he's like, all of these superhero teams, all of them. And they list, a long
the
list
Great
of them.
Lakes
like,
Avengers passed on you.
Yeah, so that was interesting. I mean, what did you think? And also, because I really haven't followed this. I mean, what's become of him, that character?
So I liked it. I mean, I think that Leonard Samson. I mean, he's just a person, and they did a good job of kind of portraying him as someone with this Napoleonic complex. Someone that has just got this inferiority complex where everything he does is kind of to step out of the shadow of first his father, then Bruce Banner. And I thought that was really interesting. And it was it was interesting that it was, a takeoff of those those well-regarded X Factor issues, the kind of psychotherapy issues that he did that Peter David did in his X Factor run, and then his following X Factor run. But you get why he's a villain, but it really gives you some great insight into the character, because he's kind of a goofy character, with the low cut shirt and the green hair, and the way he looks, he should be nothing more than a sidekick. But he's actually very prominently featured in the current Al Ewing Immortal Hulk run. He's someone that is definitely, if not a main player, he's definitely a strong supporting character. So he's being used well, and he's kind of redeemed himself since the heel turn, the villain turn. So I thought that was very interesting what they did with Samson.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like I guess that's one of my other disappointments with this run, is that I feel like there are numerous instances where it could have been a lot more interesting.
Right.
I think, if we had known that Red Hulk was Ross from, much earlier on, or if this really was more of Samson's story, that could have actually been really interesting if you're really following a lot of this from Samson's perspective. And then it flips, and we find out that he's, been behind a lot of this. I don't know. I just feel like there were numerous.
That would have been really interesting, actually.
Because I mean, I just feel like that whole aspect, his turn and the reasons why, it was really interesting. And so there was some good stuff in this run, but I think it was just really, secondary to the action of Red Hulk beating everyone up, and I think the story overall suffered for it. But the Samson stuff I really did like. That was probably, one of my favorite aspects. If I had any of this run, it would have been that.
It's a very short list.
Were you a fan of the Incredible Hulk movie?
Is that the which one?
The Incredible Hulk, the Ed Norton.
Oh, the Ed Norton one. Yes, I did like that.
Yeah.
I didn't love it, but I liked it. I thought it was a decent treatment of the character. I will forever associate at this point Mark Ruffalo with the Incredible Hulk, but I think Edward Norton did a great job portraying the character.
Yeah, no, same here. I mean, I'm a huge Ed Norton fan.
Oh, I love Ed Norton. Rounders is one of my favorite movies.
Right on. And I mean, look, I love what Mark Ruffalo has done. There's always that part of me that I'm like, man, like it would have been so cool. And again, Ruffalo's a fantastic actor, but I always think like, oh man, like to have had Ed Norton and Robert Downey Jr. and these other actors, sharing the screen together would have been really cool. But I liked Incredible Hulk a lot. Would I say I loved it? I wouldn't go that far, but it's far better than I think it gets credit for.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. Is it considered a part of the MCU proper? I mean, because you've got like Black Widow in there, and well, I guess because William Hurt is in the MCU, so.
Yeah, so they brought William Hurt back as Thunderbolt, and he's in the Black Widow movie. So Black Widow wasn't in the Incredible Hulk. She was in Iron Man 2, though, which was
right.
Same.
She wasn't in a Hulk. Period. I thought Black Widow was in a Hulk movie. No. Okay.
But yeah, and I don't think. I mean, obviously there were threads from the Incredible Hulk movie, like the creation of the leader, that haven't been followed up. Since then, but there's nothing that I think directly contradicts anything in the Incredible Hulk. So, it's clearly not a movie that they're, pulling a lot from, but it's still in the canon. And, no, I definitely like that. And I liked, that's one of the things that would have been cool in subsequent movies to see, Ty Burrell playing Leonard Samson and to kind of see that, play out a little bit.
That would have been very, and there's a Hickson Gracie, cameo in the Incredible Hulk movie, and your friends that train Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu will know exactly who that is. So,
all right.
Do you think we're going to see a Red Hulk in the MCU? I mean, obviously, the seeds are there. We've got the actor, and.
I mean, I don't know.
Do you think we should?
It's funny because, like, I don't know. I mean, you would be able to answer this better than I would because I think you're more plugged in with stuff that's come out, more recently. I mean, I don't know what the legacy of Red Hulk is. Like, I don't know if that's the kind of character that they would really see a ton of potential in for a movie. But I mean, like, I don't know. And I also, it really seems like, I think more for legal issues than anything else, like we're not getting solo Hulk movies. Like we're seeing Hulk, paired up in all of these instances. So it's like, I don't know that there would even necessarily be space for that. But I don't know. What do you think?
If they're pulling from the source material, then I don't want to see it.
Yeah.
Not that William Hurt's he's a great actor, but I don't think there's enough depth to the character that would permit it to be, I mean, obviously he would have to be an antagonist in a Hulk movie if they ever decide to do one. Like he's not someone that would be that would be the lead in the movie.
Right. Yeah, I don't know. We'll have to see, but I don't know. Is there anything else about this Hulk run that you wanted to mention?
That it was a fun read. I mean,
was it?
I will say that once I got over my initial disdain of it, it's just like it's just on the surface. It's decent enough. I mean, I didn't love it. I don't know if I'll ever. I've already read it 2 times at this point, so which is 2 more than I thought I would ever actually commit to it. But it was good enough, I guess. Do you think it's you're as a big Jeph Loeb fan, which you have said on frequent occasions. Do you think that this Hulk run hurts his legacy? Do you think that it's maybe just a footnote that it's too far removed from the Loeb that you prefer, which is the nostalgic Loeb or
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, do I think, oh my God, it's so bad that it tarnishes his entire bibliography? No. I mean, I still, I can still pick up For All Seasons or Spider-Man Blue and enjoy them.
Yeah.
And, with the Marvel Color books in particular, I literally just did that a couple months ago, and they were wonderful. So, I mean, I think the work of his that I enjoyed is still there, and I would continue to enjoy it. But I do think, I mean, and I don't know if it was like his style changed or if maybe he just I don't know, wasn't as interested in telling those types of stories. I mean, I don't really know, but definitely, and I really saw it in that Superman Batman run. I really saw it at that halfway point. Really kind of shifted, and I think that's kind of the Loeb that we got when he went over to Marvel. And so, it's the sort of thing. I know he hasn't, now he's been focusing on his television projects, but it's like, I don't know, if he were to come back to comics, how excited would I be? I don't know. Probably not that excited, because I would be thinking, well, we're probably going to get this Loeb. But I would love to see him write the kind of stuff that I really fell in love with, in his writing. So I guess that's kind of where I land. Yeah, I wouldn't be so dramatic to be like, oh my God, I don't like any of his stuff now. No, but I definitely see a shift, and yeah, I don't care for the direction that he went. But then, like, you were not like, where do you kind of rank yourself as far as a Loeb fan?
So I've loved Superman for All Seasons. Loved it. It was one of those comics that really elicited an emotional reaction from me, where I read it and I just had such strong feelings of nostalgia, and it's essentially a Norman Rockwell in graphic novel form, just like this amazing slice of Americana. And I view him as someone that is capable of just pulling the heartstrings and just making you feel happy, making you feel, sad in a good way. So, to kind of see him adopt this very action-based comic, like kind of write something that focuses more on the action and less on just, the emotion. It was a little disappointing, but I'll still read his stuff. I also love the color stuff. You keep going back to Spider-Man Blue, and that's definitely a comic that also that I truly enjoyed, as well as Daredevil Yellow. So he can do it, but just make me feel emotional. Make me feel happy. Make me feel sad. Don't have someone just knock out the Watcher for no reason.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's ultimately where I land. I mean, while I really didn't enjoy this, I'm glad I read it.
Yeah.
I am glad that I read it, just for my own knowledge and context, like if nothing else. And like I said, it really closes a gap in my reading of the Loeb bibliography. I mean, there's really very little now of his comic book work that I haven't read, and most of it I've reread very recently. Yeah. I've covered, as we've addressed, like I've covered a lot of Loeb now on my various podcasts. So it'll be a little while. It'll be a little while before we get to the Long Halloween saga and that stuff. But we'll get there.
You've got to do those, though. I mean, those are.
Oh yeah.
Those are iconic books.
And I'm excited. My hope and expectation is that it'll be a little bit of it'll kind of renew my enjoyment of his work generally, right? To go back to these stories that I do remember fondly, and that I hope and I believe will hold up well. So we'll see. What should so listen, this has been fun, and I'm gonna have you back for more in the future.
Please.
I plan far out, so I don't know, and I've got a bunch of stuff already lined up, so I don't know when it will be. Yeah. And we're still recording. And normally we would do this off air, but we'll do it on air, whatever. What do you think you would want to talk about next time?
Has anyone I'd like to do DC, because it's kind of your wheelhouse, and I would love to engage with you in that, but I'm thinking Brubaker's Catwoman.
Oh, Brubaker's Catwoman. That's on my long-term list. Yeah, all right, man, that's yours.
Could I call dibs on that?
Yeah, sure.
I mean, I think that's a character defining arc or a series right there, and I'd love to be a part of it.
That's my favorite Catwoman and one of my all-time favorite runs, man. I love that stuff so much.
It's so good, man. And I'm so jealous of you for having a Darwin Cook sketch.
Yeah, it's over my head here. So in Flat Squirrel Studios, kind of right under the ceiling, I've got this little ledge, and I've got my sketches hung up there. And that's one of them. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. I didn't even mention this. In the last episode, we did all that talk about the Kevin Smith Green Arrow run, and I didn't even mention that I have a Green Arrow sketch by Phil Hester.
You do?
And that's up there as well.
I didn't know that. I mean, because I'm kind of I love Green Arrow, and he's one of my favorite artists to kind of grace the title. The Phil Hester, Kevin Smith's run on Green Arrow was also something that was huge, and that was a great episode. Also, I mean, it was very cool to listen to. But I'm so jealous of you. I mean, you have a Maniple, you have a Phil Hester Green Arrow, and you have a Darwin Cook Hal Jordan. Oh, so jealous.
Well, listen, your art collection is nothing to sneeze at. You've gone much farther down that.
I blame you, dude. I listened to that one episode, and then I was like, I could do this. I blame you.
Fair enough. I know we did that season 2 episode of My Comic Shop History where I had like 3 of the AR crew who are like real big art collectors.
Yeah.
And that was one of the most listened to episodes, and it was so much fun to do. Like I learned a lot because those guys, Phil is still into it. Tom and Drew have taken a step back, but all 3 of them at various points have been like full on into it. So it was really interesting to hear from them, and in terms of just how they deal with artists and the back and forth and the amount of money that they're dropping, like it was really fascinating.
It really gives you a blueprint as to how to kind of get into the comic art collecting aspect. That's still, I full disclosure, I still listen to that episode, dude. Like, it's forever downloaded on my phone. It's something that I will just pop on when I'm riding the train or going on a long drive. I'll listen to that episode.
Well, I appreciate it. I'm glad that it stood the test of time. The how-to stuff is fun. I mean, and I did, again, as far as other, highly downloaded episodes of My Comic Shop History, I did that 4-parter with Ben from Zap Comics about how he goes about, collecting back issues and all that stuff. And I know people were really into that. I mean, I don't know how many other how-tos there, I don't know. Because I'd be open to doing more, but, like the art and the back issues are big, are big pieces. Like I don't know what else, and I've done stuff with toys and toy collecting and customization and all that stuff. So it's like, I mean, I don't really know.
Have you done statues?
Do you have statues. I feel like statues have really kind of waned, though. I mean,
but you can contribute to that because you were a big statue guy at one point in your collecting career.
Yeah, and I sold them to Aw Yeah Comics. So if anyone wants to check out statues that used to be in my personal collection, they're at Aw Yeah Comics in beautiful downtown Harrison, New York.
My brother is in, which my brother's in Westchester now. So I've told him you need to go to Aw Yeah. That is a very great comic store out in your neck of the woods.
Has he gone?
I think he has. I don't know if he picked up too much, but I think he has. I've actually driven out there just to kind of scope out the shop based on your recommendation.
Right on. No, that's good. No, it's a very.
So you're bringing in foot traffic, dude. So you should probably be getting a commission or something from every sale that they get.
What's really funny? Going back to where we started with, Nick Jones. I think he ordered that Hulk omnibus.
We feel bad
He's been ordering a lot of stuff from Escape Pod Comics.
Oh, on Long Island. Okay.
On Long Island.
Yeah.
And there have been numerous instances. I mean, Nick is an amazing example of that, and there have been a number of other listeners of mine, and in particular viewers of My Comic Shop Country, who have reached out to specific stores in the documentary and have ordered stuff or have I know there are a few instances I know of where people have reached out and been like, hey, charge my card and just send me whatever,
right?
or give people gift cards with it. Like they just want to help the store.
That's great, especially now. But you're an influencer, my friend.
Which is, I think this, I was happy to be able to showcase the stores, but I think people responded to the work that these people are doing, and it's nice to see that. But I guess to kind of bring all of this full circle as we head out here, like the comic shop, My Comic Shop book club, the comic shop aspect of all of this, it's I don't know. Do you think this might have been a more fun run to read as it was coming out if you kind of had other people at the comic shop who were reading on it and you were kind of like riffing on it together?
This definitely would have been a lot more fun reading if it was coming out. Because you're not dealing with immediate disappointment. But I think it's also kind because I was looking it up, and there were a lot of really good books coming out in 2008 that probably would be more worthy of our time. The one that kind of pops into mind immediately is Matt Fraction's run on Invincible Iron Man. I just looked it up because I was like, oh, Iron Man's in this. I wonder, what else was going on at that point. But yeah, I think that if we were reading this off the racks, it probably would have been a little bit more palatable.
Yeah, and I think like just kind of having that back and forth at the store, probably would have added something to it. But I appreciate everyone who listened to or watched this episode. I think we got a good amount of mileage out of this run.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't. Again, I don't know that there was so much substance there, so I don't know that it lent itself to the type of conversation we might have otherwise had. Right. Or conversations that I've had about works in other episodes, but this was certainly fun, and it was. This was really cool to finally be able to do this.
Thank you so much. I mean, as I've told you, I'm I'm a long time listener, first time caller. So it's cool that I've kind of, and I'm not taking credit for any of this, but I've kind of seen you from bored law student looking to do anything else, anything else. Besides practice in the field of law, to someone who's kind of become very well known and well regarded in the comic book community. You've got a lot of great connections. You've made a lot of great connections with comic industry professionals, whether it be the retail aspect or the creative aspect of it. Like your net worth in this field has skyrocketed.
Well, I appreciate that. And look, you've been a day one supporter with all this stuff. I mean, it was during law school that I made that first documentary about alternate realities, and you were there and you were at that first screening, and you've been at subsequent screenings. Yeah. And I appreciate all of the support. And again, like with you in particular, it's this weird crossover where yes, we met in law school, but we have between this and our shared love of How I Met Your Mother and other television shows, it's like we have all of these shared interests. It's not just that we went to school together,
right.
But we have that as well. And there's really something to be said for that bonding experience of being in contracts class next to each other and being like, oh, we don't get called on today.
Exactly. Sitting in white collar crimes and just trying to figure, like, keeping your head down because none of this has to do with art forgery.
I still, you and I took white collar crime in our second year, and I remember when we had, like, the professor had us go around the room and explain why we were interested in taking the class, and I remember saying, I was like, I like the show White Collar on USA.
I think our professor was like, I've heard that before, and I don't appreciate that response.
But listen, it's why I took the class. But you and I took that final as a makeup.
We did, yes.
Because we had other finals at the same time, and like you could kind of shift if you had two finals on the same day. And I was thinking about this recently when the holidays, happened, because you and I, and this is now going back a decade, but it was December 23rd at night when we were taking that white collar crime final, and I remember we were done, and we were like, we have to be the last people in the country taking a law school exam this year.
Circumstances were very much against us in that situation. Because I will admit that, I obviously, it's a final, and, in law school, the final counts for a lot of your grade, but it was just so hard to muster any kind of interest or any kind of desire to do well on that exam, because you're facing down the barrel of Christmas break, so...
Yeah, that was tough, but at least we went through that together. Yeah. But no, this was great. How did it feel now to be on an episode as opposed to just listening to
Besides the coughing faux pas, I feel like it was.
I was real worried about.
Oh, I thought I was done. I mean, like the people that are watching this, that will be watching this, are going to watch me die. So.
I hope that I have to review the tape. I hope that I registered an appropriate level of concern, because otherwise this will look real bad on my part.
If you're just laughing at me as a lung is slowly escaping my mouth. It's actually on the floor still, but you have two of them, so it's okay.
This episode comes out the end of February.
Okay.
And at the very beginning of March, I have an episode of My Comic Shop History, The Longer Halloween.
I've been listening.
Brian O'Day.
So I've been listening. So
right on, thank you. So the March episode, St. Patrick's Day, is Brian O'Day, appropriately,
right?
And but it was so funny. I mean, you'll hear this when it comes out, and listeners will hear it. But he, it's called the Longer Halloween, longer spelled with an AR, right, to reference alternate realities.
Right.
I've been doing this since my first documentary film, this play on AR. Wherever I can insert AR.
A lot of mileage out of a shop that has closed several years ago.
That's the way, yeah, exactly, man. You just got to keep riding that. But, so that's why it's called the Longer Halloween, but they're holiday themed, the episodes. And I think Brian's been listening, or he's listened to some of them, but he thought that he was supposed to read the Long Halloween. And I felt so bad because he didn't say anything until like the end. It's in the episode, but it's like at the very end of the episode. He's like, yeah, I read Long Halloween. I was like, I thought I was supposed to. So
it's a retrospective from everyone on that season. Just about what did you think about the Long Halloween?
I know. I wonder the numbers have been good. They've been healthy for this cycle of episodes. But I wonder if anyone is either listening or not listening because they're like, oh, the Long Halloween.
Right, exactly. How can you do so many episodes? How much can one individual possibly care about Julian Day?
Yeah. Or I wonder if there's anyone, like maybe there's one person out there who's been listening to every episode and they're like, when are they finally going to get to the Long Halloween?
You need to do that on like a random holiday, on like National Postage Day or National Siblings Day, where you finally discuss Well, I guess National Siblings Day would work for Long Halloween, as you've got the I forget the name of the crime lord, but
yeah. Well. Anyway, we've gone on a tangent, but that's all right. Hopefully people enjoyed it.
I hope so as well.
Again, thank you very much. This was really a lot of fun.
This was so much fun, man. I've looked forward to this all week.
Yeah, no, same here. This was, again, you were the perfect person, honestly, to have on for this run, because I was like, the whole time I was like, all right, at least I know we'll have fun.
Yeah.
We'll have fun. And because the idea of, I don't know, if I had to have like a really serious conversation about this run, I don't know what I would say.
Gosh, I mean, I don't think it would come off very positively if it was a serious conversation.
No, so thank you, my friend.
Absolutely, thank you so much. I look forward to it. It's an honor. Honestly, it's an honor to be on your show because I've watched you kind of build this from the ground up into something that is both highly regarded and has a very dedicated following. So, I'm so happy for you, dude, because, obviously this is a passion project that you've actually kind of managed to make into something that is more than you ever expected it to be.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that.
Of course, sir.
So thank you, Jeff. Thank you to all of our listeners and viewers. We'll be back with an all-new episode in 2 weeks. Of course, we have a new episode of Digging for Kryptonite out in 1 week, so a lot of fun stuff to listen to, and extra episodes at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato. We have companion shows. We got to get you on this Patreon. I'm going to call you out right here on the episode. There's so much extra stuff. You would love it. You would love it.
Okay. Because I'm made of money right now.
I put them they're all at the dollar level. I have, on the last episode, right, we did the Kevin Smith stuff.
Right.
And then in the Patreon episode, we have, we talked about Batman Cacophony.
Oh.
That was, well, my guest was Scott Honig, who did the main episode, and then we did that, and he's the one who liked Red Hulk, and he was far more complimentary of Batman Cacophony than I was, and that I thought anyone would be. So it's always interesting to get different perspectives. So,
hey man,
but anyway, so
I'll sign up.
But we got a lot of.
You already put me on blast, so I guess I have no choice.
I'm just busting your chops. You've gone above and beyond in all of your support of this stuff, and I appreciate it.
I've always got your back, you know that.
But yeah, so a lot of extra stuff on the Patreon page. Digging for Kryptonite next week. My Comic Shop Book Club in 2 weeks. Until then, remember, they're all imaginary stories.
Holla back, Nick Jones.
My Comic Shop Book Club is a Flat Squirrel production. Art by Kristen San Gregorio, music by Basic Printer. If you like what you heard, be sure to check out my other podcasts, Digging for Kryptonite and My Comic Shop History. Sign up for exclusive content, including the official book club companion podcast, at patreon.com/Anthony Desiato, and watch my documentary film, My Comic Shop Country, out now on Apple TV and Amazon.